A very good afternoon to all our participants. We thank you for joining us on this special panel discussion on TDS and TCS, Easing Corporate India's Compliance Burden, jointly presented by TaxSutra and Nextime. Today, our esteemed panelists shall give us an overview of provisions, discuss the recent amendments and impact, as also throw light on the open ended issues. Our first panelist for today is Ms. Anuprita Mehta, who has more than 20 years of experience with focus on taxation. She currently works with ArcelorMittal Nippon Steel India Limited as head taxation and is responsible for the tax advisory, planning, compliance, and litigation in the areas of direct tax and indirect tax, transfer pricing, international tax, mergers and acquisition tax, etc. Prior to joining AMNS, Anuprita worked with various MNCs in consulting and industry such as Piramal, Capgemini, Thomson Reuters, PwC Mumbai, and New York, thus leading to a well rounded multi industry and international work experience. Our second panelist for today is Mr. Mayur Desai, who is the Senior Vice President Taxation with Ambuja Cements Limited and heads the direct tax function of Ambuja Cements and ACC, both listed companies. He is based out of Mumbai and has about 37 years of experience in the fields of taxation and regulatory services, including about a 10-year stint with Big Four consultancy firms in India. His core competence is advising on complex tax issues and providing detailed analysis and insight on key tax developments. Our third panelist for today is Nishit Parikh, who is a chartered accountant and partner at Sudip K. Parekh and Company LLP. Nishit has over 14 years of experience in advising several domestic and international corporates on the matters relating to international tax, FEMA, and structuring of inbound and outbound investment. He also has experience in handling a wide range of cases at various levels. Today's panel shall be moderated by Mr. Maulik Doshi, who is Nextime's Senior Executive Director. With over 19 years of experience in cross-border tax, Maulik heads transfer pricing at Nextime Escape. He also oversees transaction advisory services function. A chartered accountant by qualification, he advises multinational corporations on Indian and foreign transfer pricing rules in all contexts, including planning, litigation, and advanced pricing agreements. Maulik has been recognized as a highly ranked practitioner by Euromoney's transfer pricing expert guides. Before I hand it over to TaxSutra's group editor, Arun Giri, I would like to take the opportunity to apprise you all that in the last 10 minutes of the panel discussion, our panelists will host a dedicated question and answer session. For this, you may post your queries in the chat box, which is located on the bottom right of your screen. Also requesting all participants to kindly keep their videos on mute. With this, I now hand it over to Arun.
So much, and I hope all our listeners, TaxSutra readers are staying in and staying safe. It's tough times for everyone as the nation grapples with this second wave. But as they say, the show must go on. While the department has announced, some deferral of some of these of the timelines, but nevertheless they have to be met. And in many ways, actually, this is this drill is a drill that we almost prepared for last year. It's a repeat of that drill. Staying from home, working from home, deferral of these timelines, but finally these timelines have to be met. And today the provisions that Maulik is going to run, with the esteemed panel, especially from the corporate side, we have Mayur Bhai and Anuprita, is on TDS and TCS, and very very nice. I like the way it's the pun on the words, easing corporate India's compliance burden. It is a burden. We were in two minds whether to use the word nightmare or burden. So I in fact requested Tanaya to tone it down. I said, let's call it a burden. If we call it a nightmare, people may not even join the webcast. But yeah, the reason why the TDS provisions were first brought in, and please correct me, Mayur, if I'm wrong, is convenience. The government wanted to collect tax at source. And if you look at any provision, and I've said this before also on some of the webinars, the provisions are introduced with a very, very simple objective. Most of the income tax provisions, even including a provision like reassessment. So was the case with service tax in 1994, which was introduced with just 3 sections, Finance Act 94. And so were TDS and TDS provisions, I'm sure, especially TDS, which we studied in CA final in 2003. And each of them have acquired a life of their own. Today, 194, I, J, K, L, literally you have to refer to the Income Tax Act 4 times to make sense of some of these provisions. Then you have so many case laws. Then you have to see whether deduction is permissible, not permissible. Oh dear. So each of these have become a litigation hotbed. None of the 400 people on this call should complain. The reason why we exist and we are relevant as professionals because the income tax code is so complicated. And how much ever we complain, how much ever utopian our thinking is that we want a simple tax code, always remember a simple tax code is an oxymoron, which will not be a reality in this lifetime. Unless, of course, we find some oil reserve somewhere, which will eliminate the need for tax collection. That is not going to happen. So the TDS provisions will exist. And the seriousness with which the government has taken the TDS provisions is that if you default on some of these TDS payments, the number of people who are struck with a prosecution notice is not a joke. And I know of so many people who received a prosecution notice, and after that, no one has ever delayed a TDS payment, I can say. So the provisions were introduced ostensibly for easing the collection convenience for the government. What it has done is actually shifted the burden on the taxpayer. And these are provisions you can no longer ignore, especially as a corporate. Because today, as a corporate, the investor, so many stakeholders look at some of these trends, whether you're paying your liabilities on time, whether you have a lot of tax litigations, how many litigations are spending. I know of a corporate group which has 30 tax litigations in the High Court and Supreme Court on several matters, be it corporate tax, domestic tax, international tax, transfer pricing. So some of them may be actually beyond TDS. So you don't know. Interpreting these provisions has also become important. Maulik will take us through, and profuse thanks to our panelists, Mayur Bhai and Anuprita for joining this panel. You get a different view from them. Maulik, profuse thanks for agreeing to moderate it, and Nishit, look forward to your views as well. On that note, handing it over to my good friend Maulik.
Thank you so much, Arun. Thanks for this kind of real nice introduction. You rightly mentioned that the very basic of the TDS and TCS provision was ease of collection of taxes, which primarily is a function of the government activity. The government should be kind of looking at collection taxes, which in some sense is kind of getting it outsourced or getting it done through corporates. Though over the period of time, the TCS and TDS provisions, I have kind of really undergone a significant amount of change. And like Arun mentioned, it's become a code by itself. So what we are going to do today is that we're going to, in the first 15 minutes or so, concentrate on some of the new changes that have been introduced in the last year or so, the Finance Act 2021, as well as some changes that were relevant from Finance Act 2020 perspective also. And after having an overview, we'll then kind of go down to the panel discussion in terms of I have some really interesting questions, and we get an industry perspective from Mayur Bhai and Anuprita in terms of what their views on some of the changes that are taking place. So to kick off the discussion, essentially the TDS sections that I used to study when I was kind of studying my chartered accountancy course 20 years back is now completely different from what it is right now. It was earlier to a larger extent much simplistic in the sense that you need to obviously remember many sections, and tax TDS rates in different sections used to differ. But over the period of time now, you need to check, okay, whether the deductee has got a permanent account number. If not, the tax rate changes. Now they've introduced an additional provision of whether deductee is filing tax returns or not. Otherwise, again, there is a penal consequences. You need to check whether TCS provision exists or not. You need to check whether equalization levy applies, and then see whether equalization levy applies or TDS applies. So the ambit has kind of increased so wide that virtually TDS exercise has become a full-fledged exercise by itself. And the companies, the professionals who are kind of working on the TDS part have to be extremely careful of this thing. The The second part is which is pretty much very peculiar and unique to India, is the penalties that are kind of for non-compliances, etc. A simple interest and kind of would have kind of made things much easier. But now if you don't deduct TDS, if you don't pay it on time, you can face disallowance of expenses, other penal consequences, and including, we have seen at least a couple of years back, there was spate of prosecution cases launched where there was a kind of delay in depositing taxes to the government. So right from interest payments till prosecution, you can end up anywhere in terms of penal consequences. And this is why the TDS and TCS provisions kind of really assume importance. Now, just in last 2 years, if you see the amount of change that has taken place, in fact, last 1 year and 1 month, if I can say, the amount of changes that have taken place in TDS thing, it's phenomenal. You got TCS as a whole provision got introduced from 1st October 2020. TCS was made applicable on sale of goods, which was kind of always considered to be an area where no TDS, TCS provisions should apply. TCS got introduced on LRS, on the overseas liberalized remittance scheme, on tour packages, etc. There's the Finance Act 2021 introduced now a TDS on purchase of goods. So you have a TCS on sale of goods and a TCS on purchase, a TDS on purchase of goods. Last year, we again saw TDS being introduced on e-commerce transactions, on cash withdrawals. 2020 also saw a complete change in the dividend taxation regime. While kind of there are always two views in terms of whether this dividend taxation regime is beneficial or not. Keeping apart the tax benefits, it is definitely a compliance nightmare, if I may use the word again, for companies where there are kind of lakhs of shareholders and they have to ensure that the right TDS is being done. They need to, and apart from right TDS, they need to file those 15 CSCB forms, etc. So the entire exercise is kind of a really compliance thing where possibly companies would have to dedicate departments after departments doing this work, or they have no option but to look at automation and technology to kind of look at some of the things. So very quickly, just 2 or 3 things that I wanted to touch upon is, one was TDS on dividends. This was introduced in last year in Finance Act 2020. It is still relevant in the current year because one of the major change they did by way of Finance Act 2021 was to give benefit to FIIs with a lower withholding tax rate if the tax treaty provides for that. So the lower withholding tax rate could apply if the FIIs provides all the documentation. So again, if a company has 200, 300 FIIs as their shareholders, they will have to ensure that they get the TRC, beneficial ownership, all those kind of documentation. You have to see whether the MLI with the respective country is in place or not, and if there are additional conditions under MLI to fulfill the treaty ownership, we have to comply with these additional conditions. We have now got kind of spate of rulings on the MFN clause with India-Netherlands tax treaty, and therefore you have to check the MFN clause under these tax treaty. After doing all of this, then you have to apply a right withholding tax rate, which is applicable to the FII. So while this provision kind of did cheer up the investor community from an FDI and FII perspective, it is definitely much more beneficial as compared to the earlier provision, because most treaties has a lower rate of taxes. It is definitely kind of leading to a lot of compliance work and a lot of work at the Indian corporate level. And the data is so voluminous, like any large company would have easily between 10 lakhs to 20 lakh shareholders, right? And out of them, non-resident shareholders could be a few lakhs itself. So with such a large data, the collection of forms, collection of data, all the details, and then determining such a TDS rate it's a burden by itself. And again, unless companies introduce automation and technology, it's going to be very difficult to fulfill something like this. So the TDS on dividend is again one thing that companies have to pay attention to. While looking at it very simplistically, above 5,000, 10% rate for resident shareholders, it seems very simple. But then there are cases where you've got a spate of exemptions available to LICs and those insurance and AIFs and everything. So you have to consider those exemptions also. So it's not as simple as it sounds. While from the government perspective, they just kind of made a statement that it applies only above 5,000 and only a 10% straight rate is provided. Same way, this new provision of TDS and TCS, and that's going to be the crux of our discussion, because that is something which now will be effective from 1st of July 2021, unless obviously the government in its wisdom feels that it needs to be extended. The TCS on sale of goods were introduced last year. And if we see the provision, last year what the government kind of provided was that any company with a turnover of more than 10 crores, if they are selling to a particular customer and the sales to a particular customer exceeds 50 lakhs, then they have to collect TCS at the rate of 0.1%. And they have to pay this TCS to the government's treasury. Now, this was at the point of collection. So typically at the time of receipt of the money from the customer, from the debtor, and then you have to deposit it to the government's treasury. Now, first of all, when the provisions were introduced and kind of there were certain FAQs, etc., being provided, certain clarifications being given, one thing which the entire corporate community is being very difficult to kind of align themselves is the basis of collecting and depositing tax is more like cash basis. Once you collect from your debtors or customer, you deposit it to the government's treasury. Now, the more like 10 out of 10 corporates would be following an accounting system which is more accrual based, with kind of ERPs and all the ERPs, etc., built in properly. For them to follow a cash basis where they have to track each and every receipt and then see on receipt basis collect 0.1% without that amount getting invoiced or without that amount being mentioned in the invoice, it was going to be a very difficult task itself. So there is already a kind of a difficult situation for corporates adopting to the TCS law by letter. Right now, my knowledge is that most corporates are paying it purely based on accrual basis. They charge it on the invoice and then kind of they pay it to the government irrespective of when they receive the money from the customer. Now, this was already in place since 1st October 2020. The logic given by the government is that they wanted to widen the tax net. They wanted the data to be captured in terms of people who are making significant purchases but not filing their tax returns or not kind of declaring the purchases on their books, etc., which itself was undigestible at that point in time because the government had all the data on the GST side. Everything on the GST is automated, moving through the GSTN portal, etc. So first of all, that GST data itself should be able to help the government. But nevertheless, this provision was introduced and kind of companies were required to comply with it. Now, come 2021, the budget of the Finance Act 2021 has introduced now TDS on purchase of goods. Now, they have said that where the company is purchasing goods and the company's turnover is more than 10 crores, then, and the purchase of goods is more than 50 lakhs, so they are making payment in excess of 50 lakhs to a particular vendor, then they need to deduct tax at the rate of 0.1%. Obviously, if the vendor does not have a permanent account number, this rate increases to 1%. They have now specified that if the buyer is liable to deduct tax at source, so under the new provisions which were introduced in Finance Act 2021, which are effective from 1st July 2021, if the buyer is liable to tax at source, then the TCS need not be applied. So you are relieved from TCS. They also provided that if TCS is applicable or TDS is applicable in any other section, then this section would not apply. So they have provided, they're trying to take care that it's not a double whammy, it's not a double deduction and double collection of taxes by the government, but practically that's going to be a challenge. Practically how do companies administer that? It's going to be a larger challenge. And this is now going to be effective 1st of July. And I'm sure you'll come across a lot of transition issues, right? Be invoiced prior to July, payment made after July. You already, the customer would have already charged you TCS on that. Now you have to deduct TCS, whether you deduct TDS on the whole amount, on including GST, including TCS, or you deduct only on the net amount of the goods. So all of those questions will be there. And some of the questions we are trying to kind of address in the panel discussion. So this is the new provision that kind of got introduced in the Finance Act 2021, which is TDS on purchase of goods. The other aspect that got introduced is the section 206 AB, mainly on account of penalty or higher TDS rate for non-filers of tax return. Now, this is a classic example where, okay, the provisions are there where you need to deduct taxes or collect taxes respectively. Now, what the government has asked us to do as taxpayers is that you need to check with your vendor and with your customers whether they have filed 2 years tax returns or not for the past 2 years or not. If they have filed 2 years tax returns, then the TDS rate or TCS rate as applicable is okay. But in case they have not filed 2 years tax returns, then the TDS rate would increase to, would become double, or it would be the higher rate of 5%. Same way, TCS rate also would become double, or a higher rate of 5% would be provided. Now, these again changes are going to be effective from 1st of July 2021. And these are the changes which are kind of are throwing the corporate world right now outside in terms of a lot of challenges that they would face. First of all, they have to really balance out the interplay between TDS and TCS in terms of where TDS applies, where TCS applies, etc. or not. The second part is that they have to ensure that the recipient is kind of filing the deductee or the customer, the vendor or the customer is filing that tax returns. For that, the government has promised that they have come out with a tax, with a utility similar to what was done with Section 194N last year when banks were asked to deduct taxes on withdrawals of more than 1 crore. So on the same lines, the government said that they will provide the utility. As of now, there is no news further on that, whether the government is ready with the utility, whether they are going to make it public. Even with the utility, it would require significant automation because most larger corporates would have vendors running into thousands and lakhs. And therefore, to ensure that they have the, whether they have filed the tax returns or not, based on the utility that the government will provide, is going to be an exercise by itself. Now, if it's going to be effective 1st July, I'm sure that the government should come out with it a little bit early in time so that necessary changes can be done to the ERP, necessary controls can be put in place. The government has also provided that the PAN needs to be linked with Aadhaar. And wherever the PAN is not linked with Aadhaar, that PAN would be regarded as a defunct PAN or a not valid PAN. Now, that deadline is also extended to 30th June 2021. Now, interestingly, we had a provision where if the recipient, if the deductee or the customer does not have a permanent account number, the TDS rate used to again get double. That was 206 AA. Now, imagine a situation where you have the permanent account number of the vendor, but you don't know whether it is linked with Aadhaar or not. And come 1st of July, when the government deadlines gets over, if the vendor has not linked his PAN with the Aadhaar, then automatically that PAN becomes invalid. In which case, it is a case where as good as you don't have a permanent account number, and therefore you have to follow the higher rate, which is the double the tax rate that is being provided under the relevant provisions. So again, the PAN Aadhaar linking and validating that part, the government will have to come out with something. Right now, some limited thing is available on the NSDL portal, but that is something, again, a lot of corporates will have to undergo the entire thing. So these changes that are taking place have kind of completely, in my view, shaken the corporate world in the sense that it puts a significant additional compliance burden. To a larger extent, it is kind of a U-turn, introducing TCS earlier and now introducing TDS provisions. Like even when TCS was introduced, everyone's wondering why not kind of, why what's a TDS not introduced, because it would still have made the same objective. So again, we don't have any logical reasoning in terms of why such kind of step was done. If these provisions, I think corporates would have to comply with them, and they will have to kind of look at the scenario. I tried to draw a flowchart. I wanted to keep it very simple. This is the best I could achieve in terms of keeping it simple. And companies will have to navigate themselves through this flowchart to reach a position where they're to decide which tax rate they need to decide, right? So it was so simple 20 years back, where I know that, okay, I'm paying rent, I deduct these taxes, I'm kind of paying for contractor, I deduct these taxes. There were controversies in classification, which accepted, but pretty much I didn't have to kind of go through this entire complicated flowchart to arrive at the tax rate at that point in time. Now we'll have to decide, first of all, you have to check whether what is your turnover, what is your purchase from a particular vendor or sell to a particular customer, and whether the customer is going to deduct taxes or not. You have to go through that entire chain and then look at collecting taxes at 0.1%, 5%, respectively, depending on what tax rate would ultimately apply. So obviously, I'm not going to go through this entire flowchart. I kept it mainly for people's understanding in terms of they need to devise something like that. They need to put down this in their ERP so that the finally ERP gives a right result in terms of what rate to be deducted. The most important part is on the consequences. Like the consequences are significant in terms of looking at various aspects. There's a disallowance of expenditure. There is kind of interest. There's a penalty provisions, and finally there's prosecution. So one has to be really geared up in terms of ensuring that they don't face this penal action. And basically the way I look forward is that people have to kind of look at these 4 aspects when they are kind of preparing themselves to move to this thing. They'll have to gear up to ensure their completeness, timelines, and accuracy. First of all, they need to take the right legal positions. There are a lot of interpretation aspects, some of which we'll touch upon in our panel discussions, in terms of how do you interpret past 2 years tax returns, which 2 years you have to check, when you have to take the declarations, whether a delayed return filing is comes in the past 2 tax years returns or not. Also, a lot of legal interpretation issues are there. So companies will have to adopt their legal positions and kind of on these contentious areas. Technology is the only answer. I don't see any other way out other than technology. You have to leverage the technology and automation to kind of save time and ensure that there is accuracy. You have to put down your ERP, kind of integrate this entire thing as a part of your ERP and make the process so strong that the process takes care of it itself. And obviously you still have to kind of monitor this through, ideally through a dashboard kind of a situation where you constantly are kind of made aware of what kind of tax credits are there, so that there is no loss. You need to take this tax credit into account when you're doing your advanced tax calculation, when you're filing your tax returns. A lot of this stuff would now be available in 26As. So kind of you just have to ensure that you are constantly monitoring that, reconciling your books of accounts with the 26A statement and ensuring that the tax rate reflected in the books of accounts is right. And you take that into account when you are finalizing the computation. So with this kind of brief overview of the provisions, I'll kind of move on to the question answers with the panelists, and which is where I want to get the panel's view on this. So thank you, Mayurbhai. Thank you, Anuprita, kind of for agreeing to be a part of the panel. I know a lot of difficult questions are going to be there, difficult to explain to an audience right now. But I'm so glad that you agreed for it and you are a part of this panel. So Anuprita, let me kind of...
your questions will not be as difficult as the TDS provisions, I'm sure.
I agree. Right. So Anuprita, I wanted to start off with you. We kind of touched upon the numerous changes that are taking place constantly in these TDS and TCS provisions. So how do you think, as tax heads or CFOs, companies are dealing with this? What is the right approach, and what should our audience take away from this in terms of dealing with this kind of a situation?
Yeah. So good evening, everybody. And I hope all of you are staying safe and healthy. And thanks, Maulik and Tax Sutra, for giving me this opportunity to be a part of the panel. So Maulik, while you have listed down so many provisions of TDS, one thought that came to my mind is TDS has become synonymous to the word TDS now. It's really tedious to comply with TDS provisions. So I think as tax heads or CFOs, it's really very important to analyze all these changes very carefully. One needs to take tax positions and do the necessary changes in the ERP systems and introduce as much automation as possible very quickly, because now we don't have much time. And one may also have to undo certain changes in your systems and processes that you may have introduced just 6 months back when TCS, especially section 206C18 introduced. And keeping in line with the recent changes, specifically, I'll just give you some examples as to what changes are required in the ERP systems. So first of all, your vendor master and customer master, we need to update that with PAN, and whether the linkage of PAN Aadhaar is done or not for individual customers or vendors. We'll have to determine in the ERP system itself, in the vendor master, whether you have the residential status of your vendor or customer. We will have to give declaration to the vendor that TDS under section 194Q would be done by us, and hence the vendor should not do TCS. Likewise, we need to obtain a declaration from the customer that he would do TDS, and hence you will not be required to do TCS. And this updation of vendor master for creating new withholding tax codes and the types for deducting TDS on purchase of goods, all of that needs to be configured. We need to also quickly have some API from the tax authorities to facilitate the checking of tax return filing by the vendor or the customer, as the case may be, at the time of invoice posting itself, specifically for vendors at the time of invoice posting or whenever they are making advance payment, so that appropriate higher rate of TDS can be applied. So a lot of automation is required to be done on a real quick basis. We hope that the API from Income Tax Department is released quickly. There may be also changes that are required in the robotics for implementing the new changes also, because currently, say many companies may be for material invoices, they may be posting it through RPA or bot. And until now, TDS was not required. Now you have to bring in that change in your RPA process to facilitate this TDS on goods. We also need to take decision on technical positions. So while we know that, to determine the correct rate of TDS, you have to check two requirements, whether they have done their income tax filing for the past 2 years, for which the due date of filing the return has not expired. And also you need to check whether the threshold of that 50,000 rupees of TDS or TCS is met for those 2 years. Now, how would I know as a deductor whether my deductee's TDS or TCS has exceeded this threshold limit or not? At best, I can know what I have done in terms of the past 2 years for TDS or TCS, but I will generally not know what has, what is the overall position for that deductee, because there is little, the way the section is worded, it is little vague. One can't really make out whether it is only my TDS or TCS that one needs to consider, or the overall TCS. So I may just take a practical call that I will ignore this condition. I will just, rely on the compliance of the past 2 years. Again, that is very dynamic, because, you have to do this check at the time of the transaction, because if you're doing this transaction on April 1, then past 2 years, when the due date would have expired is going to be different. Then when you're doing a transaction and determining the appropriate rate on, say, 1st of December, because we have different deadlines, right? 31st July for individuals, 30th September if you don't have transfer pricing, 30th November if you have. So it is very dynamic and evolving. So one has to really make decisions on how you want to apply these provisions and determine the appropriate tax rate.
Thank you, Anuprita. I think the list of actions that you mentioned for companies to kind of comply with, they will require an army of people to kind of do that, unless they are completely relying on technology. Mayurbhai, I wanted to kind of come in with you in terms of your significant experience. I wanted to kind of, I have kind of thought through, and I have no answers, but I wanted to know your thoughts in terms of what is government's objective in introducing these new provisions. Because I find it completely unfair that the corporates are being kind of loaded with these activities which ideally the government should perform in terms of checking whether the deductees have filed their tax returns or not. So what do you think is the government's logic behind this?
Okay, so first of all, good afternoon to all the participants, and wish you all of a safe time this time. Thanks, Maulik, and thanks to your team for trusting us for this panel. And thanks to TechSutra also for this opportunity being granted to share the thoughts with various people, so many people. Now, Maulik, as you asked that what could be the objective? Now, before that, you made a very nice observation when you were making some presentation, that now government is asking you to find out whether he is tax compliant, whether he has filed return, whether his TDS has gone above 50,000 or not, or something. So if this trend continues, I'm sure sometime government will ask whether your deductee has a criminal records or not, whether your deductee has laundering cases against it or not. So and that would not be surprising, because the objective which are stated, as you were asked me about the objective which are stated, and ultimately how these things are administered are quite different. They are poles apart. So going to what you are asked me, as Anuprita said, difficulty in implementation. Now you have given one provision in October about TCS on, I will assume that provision is known to everyone about 10 crores and 50 lakhs and all. So going back to, give me a second. Yeah. So going back to the time now, what happens is you did something, you innovated something, you made your SAP system to align with something. Now you have to undo it. So doing something, then undoing it, and within the span of 6-8 months, 1 year. And this is what the provisions are telling you to do. So that is where we will have to appropriately adjust ourselves. As Mr. Palkhiwala said, that income tax provision is a one-way ticket for 1 year journey. And that is I don't know why, but every finance minister is keen to prove that some provisions which have been made earlier, I will change it. Even if himself or herself have made some provision, they will change it in the subsequent year. So as a corporate, you find yourself in a situation where you have to constantly be aware, you have to constantly be keeping on changing. And these things are, Maulik, before I go to specifically answering your question, these things are not administered by Anuprita or Mayur or somebody else at the corporate top level, or these are not administered by a team of 5-10 people. These are administered by thousands of people who are working on the field, whether tax is to be deducted, whether tax is to be collected, whether appropriately collection has been made, whether it has been paid. And there are so many automated systems. I can keep on adding the list. Now, coming to your question about the objectives. So let me just read out to you the objectives. Those are stated, whenever there is any enactment is done, they state the objective of a particular provision, either in memorandum or a notes explaining to those provisions. So you look at the objective of 206C. The objective was to widen and to deepen the tax net. What about the objective of 194Q, which has been introduced now, which is overriding 206C, is to ensure compliance burden only on those who can comply. Okay, it answers everything, but let me just take it further. Now look at 206AB, ensure filing of return by deductees. Then what government machinery is for?
Absolutely.
So these kind of objectives are stated for bringing these kind of provisions, which are very difficult to comprehend and to comply. So actually the approach is not aligning with the objective.
True. Thank you so much, Mayur. I think I think you rightly mentioned that what is the government machinery for? If we are supposed to do that, I think we all should raise an invoice to the government saying that at least whatever taxes we collect on behalf of government, a certain percentage should come back to us. I think someone had made it a point when this whole vaccination thing was going on, that at least the taxpayer should get the first right to vaccination, because the entire vaccination process government is doing free of cost right now is from taxpayers' money itself.
Absolutely.
And there are of taxpayers.
Absolutely.
Nishit, coming on to you, as tax consultants, you must be having a hard time right now, right? Clients approaching you with these changes in terms of what they need to do. How are you helping clients navigate these changes? And very frankly, how many clients are aware of these changes? How many companies are aware of these changes? Are most of them taken by surprise when you tell them this new change coming in?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Maulik. Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone is doing good and safe. So to answer your question, majority of large companies which we are working with are aware of the provisions and they want some kind of solution to see how they can manage it, because the time is short. The provisions came in February. You have to update your systems, update your ERPs before July. But there have been few set of clients which are not completely aware as to how humongous the effort is going to be. So like Anuprita pointed out earlier, it requires plethora of changes in an organization to implement this kind of changes. So we also realized a few years back at our organization that technology is going to be the buzzword in future, because government is moving everything offline. Like you see the faceless assessment, any form requires an XML submission on the income tax website. So if you yourself as a taxpayer are not technology savvy, then you will have a hard time in complying with these provisions. We have started last year working on a comprehensive solution for our clients on the dividend side, because as you mentioned in your presentation as well, there are so many checks you need to do. It is not simple that above 5,000 you deduct 10% tax. You need to identify the right categories of shareholders. You get thousands of 15G, 15H from the shareholders, which you need to manually verify. And after manually verifying, you need to submit it on an income tax portal. So if you start doing this manually, in the time limit available between the dividend declaration and dividend payout, especially in the interim dividends, is substantially small. So if you don't have a technology to use it, then it would be a nightmare for you. And now this process is going to further complicate, because till last year at least you were not getting too much documentation from your non-resident shareholders, especially the FPIs, because that 196D confusion was there, whereby FPIs were not allowed the DTAA rate, and all companies by and large were taking a position that 20% flat rate would apply to FPIs. Now that relaxation is provided to FPI, uh, on the inverse side, it would become a big burden for the companies, because now all the FPIs who are doing trading or purchasing shares in India would submit all the documents to you, and you need to verify whether they are actually the beneficial owner, whether they have a proper TRC in place. And for countries like UK, Denmark, where this MLI provisions are applicable, also look for what period they are holding the shares. So without automation, doing these activities in few days would become a nightmare. Second, on this entire TCS provision, like Anuprita elaborated, it is not only one aspect, that whether the customer or vendor has filed the returns or not. You also need to check, because of the systems you have, whether your customer is going to charge TDS on you. If not, then you charge TCS. Similarly, for your material vendors, if you are going to charge TDS, you to inform that you don't charge TCS on the invoice. And in addition to that, check whether they are filing TDS return. If you are dealing with individual vendors, then check whether they have linked Aadhaar with PAN or PAN with Aadhaar, however it works. And with all this complication, we've been using a lot of technology in our organization, creating tools, products, bots, which are required to run these checks. And I think so slowly and steadily, as we have seen, these limits of 10 crores is nothing. I don't know, majority of the population, at least the mid-sized companies and large companies, would get covered, and most of them are still grappling as to what to do. So it would become a real challenge. And either so I'm not complaining, because it's very busy for us in terms of managing the clients, but it's a nightmare for the companies.
Nishit, I'm sure you will have a good year ahead.
Yeah.
So Mayur, Nishit mentioned about TDS on dividends, and there I wanted to kind of come in with this new provision of 206 AB that was introduced, where you need to ensure that the deductee has kind of filed 2 years tax returns or not. The plain reading suggests it's applicable to dividends also. So how practically would you kind of go about? Like, I don't know how many shareholders your company would have. Would you go to each shareholder to see whether they have filed tax returns for the past 2 years or not?
So as Nishit rightly said, that and he elaborated a lot about dividend, that there is very a short time available, because in case of a dividends, you have to transfer the funds within 5 days, and dividend has to be paid out within 30 days. So with all these provisions, you are left with very limited time. Even your book closure has to be not before 7 days before the declaration of dividend and all. So if you put that in the practical aspect, you are left with almost a very limited, a week or 2 weeks time to verify such a huge, large number of the shareholders. And
Right.
the provisions are such that aggregate of TDS or TCS in case of deductee exceeds 50,000. How will you verify? How am I supposed to know that my shareholders aggregate deduction has gone above 50,000, not gone above 50,000? Then I have to verify whether he has filed returns of both the years or not. And that too as prescribed under provisions of section 139(1). As Anuprita said, it has interpretational issues, but apart from interpretational issues, such a large volume. So I believe, yes, that, this kind of, as you said in your talk, that this kind of provision were there for banks, cooperative societies, and for post office, that when there is a withdrawal above 1 crore, you check whether last year's return has been filed or not. And they were following some utility, or they were using some utility. And as you said, I also expect some utility will be available for me to check whether shareholders have filed their returns for last 2 years, or whether they are compliant or whether they are not compliant. But as it is found 15G, 15H, and he says in respect of the non-resident about their various forms, their TRC, their MLI related verifications, the holding period, all those verifications put together makes it almost difficult, not impossible, to comply timely about the TDS provisions of the dividend. And company are always on their toes to, when the declaration is being made, because those provisions of not being paying dividend in time are more stringent, and company has governance issue. It has a issue of being viewed as non-compliant. So those provisions are more stringent. People want to follow that, and therefore on tax team there will be a lot of pressure to come out with all these things. Look at this. I am doing TDS as what? I am doing TDS as an agent of a government. Correct? So this is forced agency, right? Now they are increasing my burden day by day by adding flavor to it, that you check whether he is compliant, you check whether he has got this limit crossed or not. And then there are stringent provisions, as you mentioned, that there is a penalty for not doing TDS, there is a disallowance, there is penal provisions, there is a prosecution. So at some point of time, somebody has to look at this with more consideration and more positive framework, rather than extending these TDS provisions like this.
Right. I think, thank you, Mahbub. I think that was really relevant and really useful.
One small,
Sure.
one small statistics I would like to just share with you, and that is tweeted by the CBDT. The tweet of CBDT says that there are 5.78 crores people who have filed the return for the assessment year 1920. And then they have said that of that 4.32 crores are paying tax on income less than 5 lakhs. So with the rebate provision coming in, they say now going forward, only 1.46 crores will be required to file the return. This is, I am not giving my statistic. This is a tweet of CBDT. Now in that light, how many shareholders will get out of filing of the return?
Absolutely.
And if I am not cognizant to that 50,000 limit, then what will happen to those shareholders? Will they pay double the tax, or will I end up deducting double the tax? These questions are still unanswered.
And once you deduct double the tax, they'll have to file the tax return again.
Tax return again.
To claim the refund.
It's a conflicting situation, sort of.
True. Anupita, coming to you, this TCS provisions were introduced last year. I wanted to kind of check on you what kind of challenges you faced in implementing that. And now that the TDS is there on the purchase of goods, so how do you take this interplay between TCS and TDS, and how do you ensure that there is no double levy or double taxes going to the government?
Yeah. So yes, last year at the time of implementation of 2061H, there were definitely teething issues. ERP solutions were not available well in advance, and it was just right before the implementation date that a solution was provided by, say, SAP or whoever the ERP vendor may be. COVID also posed challenge to all of us, right, for the implementation. We had to take some practical calls. So though TDS is to be deposited with the government treasury on collection of invoice amount from the customer, but many companies took a stand to deposit TCS from their own pocket on raising the invoice itself. And companies didn't mind doing it because it was over compliance, and it is better to be on the safer side on a conservative basis. People just did that. And the call was taken because there were practical challenges, because many a times the clearing from invoice to collection is a manual process and it gets delayed. And because of this delay, there is also a consequential delay in transferring TCS liability from interim GL to final GL. Maybe sometimes you receive only part payment of invoices, so partial clearing happens, and this also leads to not transferring the TCS liability from interim GL to final GL correctly. People erred on they adopted a safer approach and started depositing TCS at the time of raising the invoice. Now, effective from July 1, you would have to do TCS only if the buyer has not done TDS under 194Q. So you will have to change the SAP configuration to trigger TCS only if TDS under 194Q has not happened. Now I understand that SAP, just today I got some update that SAP is providing a solution whereby you need to obtain a declaration from customer that he will deduct tax, and accordingly TCS will not trigger in your SAP system, which is fine, which is good. So you're at the inception, whether your TCS obligation is there or not. But assume a case where the customer, in spite of this declaration that he will do TDS, but for whatever reason the compliance doesn't happen from his end, right? So which means that now the TCS compliance is your liability. You have to, on the same transaction, because TDS didn't happen, you have to do TCS. So you will have to now wait till the collection of the invoice to determine whether your buyer has done the TDS or not. And if that has not happened, you have to do TCS. Now, while this possibility that in spite of giving a declaration, your customer will not do TDS is low, because there are consequential exposures for him, right? Expenditure will not be allowed, and there are other interest and penal consequences. But still, because I am obliged to do TCS if TDS under 194Q has not happened, what I'm going to do now, earlier, from October 2020 till 30th June, TCS was discharged on the sale invoice at the time of raising the invoice. And now I have to change my system to make it on a cash basis. So I will have to raise a debit note once I see whatever collection has happened, whether it is after TDS or not. If not, then I have to raise a debit note on the customer to collect the TCS amount. So I go from the invoice basis to the collection basis now. So this change I will have to bring in. So this is one glitch that I see in the new provision.
Right. I think that's I'm seeing some of the questions on the audience side, and most of the questions are on this interplay between TDS and TCS. So that's going to be a task by itself for corporate. So coming on to Nishit very quickly, more like a quick fire. Would declaration suffice? Anuprita mentioned that SAP is going to come out with it. We were also talking about kind of taking declarations from customers or vendors. Do you think declarations would suffice, or would you insist on ITR copies, and which corporate in the world would be willing to share an ITR copy? And that was one. And second question, I can kind of club it, is what happens to export of goods? Would TDS be required to be done on exports under 194Q?
Right. So to answering your first question, Maulik, hopefully the utility which we all are hoping and waiting comes out soon. And once from the utility, by putting your vendor's PAN or your customer's PAN, if you are able to get a confirmation from the government website itself that the vendor has filed last couple of years return, then the requirement of the declaration or the return copies would go away. But I don't know whether the utility will throw up the TDS part, which everybody is worried about. And Anuprita said that corporates would have to take some practical position that we may or may not look at those conditions. But if it does not come, declaration is the only way which I feel is something which you take it in writing from the vendor, that he is confirming to me that he has filed return. At best, like you mentioned, corporates may not be willing to share their ITR. At least you can take the acknowledgement numbers. And if you have the PAN and acknowledgement number, you can at least check the status on the income tax website as on today, or take the top half portion of the return which shows that they have filed along with the acknowledgement number. So that could be one of the way. Obviously, like Anuprita alluded, the timing also becomes very relevant because of the tricky provisions. It says that you need to look at what due date has passed under section 139(1) and accordingly time your declarations. Another challenging factor there which we encountered or we were struggling to answer is that what happens 139(1) timeline has passed and somebody has filed a belated return, whether I can give a benefit to him or not. And assuming he's done it for 1 year, next year he's compliant, but because of the last year late filing, can I continue to not giving him the benefit? So rather than fighting on the commercial terms, I will start fighting with my vendor and customers on the tax terms. That could be one of the situation we could extrapolate. And on the second question, very interesting question, because if we read the provisions very minutely, it says any buyer purchasing goods from any resident. So while resident has been defined at the seller's end, but at the buyer's end, the word used is any person. So any person would include any company, including any foreign entity. So today, even foreign entity purchasing goods from India, technically the provisions may trigger. Obviously, government has kept a kind of inclusive part in the definition which says that they will notify the list of person to whom these provisions would not apply. We are very hopeful that that clarification should come before 30th of June. So there is one more leg of controversy does not pop up as to what to do for the foreign companies importing goods from India, because that would hamper again India's exports. Technically, if people start taking a view that this is ridiculous, I am not going to comply, I will not do business with India kind of stand, or at least on the political level, if something starts like this, it becomes very difficult for India. So that clarification should come in my view. And as of now, the provisions are very open. So we should wait for a clarification and hopefully it should come.
Understood. Only one thing I'm pretty sure that clarification will not come before 30th June. It will come on 30th June or 4th July, definitely. So, Anuprita, one last question before I come to kind of an overall question with all the three panelists is a question on the other transactions. While we generally understand goods and kind of we do purchase and sale of goods, etc. From the last year's TCS circulars, we understood that even unlisted securities could be regarded as goods. There's another question from one of the panelists in terms of what happens in case of slum sale and whether there is a TCS or TDS to be applied on slum sale also or not, because there the units, the business is sold as a unit. So what is your view on these two things, and how do you deal with the other transactions that are not routinely classified as goods?
Yeah. So as far as the purchase or sale of securities are concerned, which are listed on a stock exchange, there is a clarification, as you also mentioned, in the context of Section 206(c)(1)(h). And as you know, goods is not defined under the Income Tax Act, but we have to refer to maybe Sale of Goods Act. And there, the stocks and shares is covered. But fortunately, because of this circular, at least the listed securities and units of mutual funds, or even for that matter, listed debentures, there is a carve out. And the same logic can apply for 194Q also. But where there are unlisted securities, private equity transactions, etc., then I think you will have to apply 194Q first. And if your buyer is not doing it, then it apply, the TCS provisions will apply. So there is no escape from that.
Thank you, Anuprita. Now, Mayur, coming to you, and this question is for maybe all the three panelists. If you can kind of, Mayur, put down one or two top concerns or top areas that you want the government to address in such an ambiguous provisions of TDS that have been brought in. What do you want government to kind of do? Hopefully they listen to it and they make some changes well before 30th June.
So yeah, see, there are some expectations that we can express to the government. Like, say, for example, we have been dealing with, and just last question you asked to Anuprita, what about the transaction about share securities? Similarly, we find that software purchase and software sale, buy and sale of the software is subject matter of lot of litigation. Either sometimes it is royalty, sometimes it is not royalty. As far as case of TCS is concerned, the software was stated to be a goods. And at least the understanding is that off-the-shelf software, if you are buying, then there is a transaction of the goods and it will fall into the definition of goods. So considering that, if government can put a clarification on this kind of software transaction, that whether they intend to apply TDS and TCS on this transaction of the softwares also or not. I can understand if something is categorized as royalty, but at present, we find a lot of litigation on categorizing software or off-the-shelf software as a goods also. So therefore, that is one thing which is a gray area. And if we can, or if somebody can reach out to the government, or if some organization can make a representation to the government saying that there should be a clarification on this. Second thing which I found is about though the tax deduction ratio is 0.1%, but that can lead to a very high amount of a tax deduction depending on the turnover and the transaction. So there is no provision for nil deduction or lower deduction. I understand lower deduction, what will be the lower than 0.1%, but still there can be a provision for nil deduction. And one can approach to government or some institution can make a point with the government that yes, there can be some provision where somebody can approach for no deduction in respect of its transaction with respect to buying and selling with certain party. So these are the two things which I thought are very important with regard to things we have discussed. Now, one more thing that one would like to, they should go soft on owners on payers for the verification, or they should make utility available faster, and that utility also should be available within the time, and not like our tax audit reports formats are made available just 7 days before the tax audit filing deadlines are done. So that is also important. And as one of the answers Anuprita covered, that I have already set up TCS provisions. I was doing an SAP has provided with all the industry on invoice basis. So that was fairly stabilized. That was fairly stable. Now you are saying that buyer will do the tax deduction. If he has not deducted the tax, then you do your TCS. Now only declaration, I am not sure whether it will work or not, because wordings of 206C 1H says that buyer is liable to deduct and has deducted. So if buyer says declaration, I will deduct, but if he has not deducted, as Anuprita says, I will have to do TCS. Now, therefore, I will have to divide my whole SAP and whole system into various parts, that I'm doing TCS at the invoice level for those who are either not in 10 crore turnover or those who have not given declaration. And for those who have given declarations, I'm watching thereafter regularly that whatever payments have come, whether TDS was done or not. And if TDS was not done, now I have to raise debit not for TCS. So this is little harsh on the business people. And if it can be communicated to government, that have a stable system rather than doing, if he has done then don't do this, or if he has done then do this. Let's not have too many ifs and buts in law. Let the law be simple.
True. Anuprita, from your side, any more points that you want the government to address?
No, I'm just hoping that the government will at least tell us very soon what the utility will provide. We understand that even government may be struggling in this pandemic, and the actual utility may be available only a few days in advance. But if they can publish at least what will be covered in the utility, then we as corporates or taxpayers, we will be geared up to do what is not available in the utility. So for example, as we discussed earlier, this process of determination of tax return filing for the past 2 years is going to be dynamic. It is at a transaction level. You have to check on the date of your transaction. Now there will be so many extensions of due dates. How am I supposed to keep a tab? So the government, it is ideal that we should have a facility to provide the PAN number in that utility, and also the section of TDS under which we are ascertaining the rate, the appropriate rate. And the government portal will do all the necessary checks about the tax return filing or the threshold of that 50,000, etc. for TDS, and then tell us the rate at which we are supposed to deduct tax, because that will ensure that we are compliant with the provision. Now, PAN India, if there is an extension of due date for return filing, we can understand, okay, we can keep a tab. Now, last year or a couple of years back, there was flood in Kerala, and only the Kerala residents were allowed to extend the due date for their return filing. So it's very difficult to keep a tab on all these nitty-gritties. So what is exactly going to be there in the utility? If it is known to us in advance, we will gear up. Otherwise, we will have to decide whether we take declarations or a copy of ITR returns from our deductees. Of course, they'll be not so willing to provide, but they can redact a few things and send us if they're so sensitive about confidentiality. So we need to just gear up well in advance. So government should at least tell us what is going to come up in that utility.
Nishit, you have any additional points? One thing I'm pretty sure, looking at the government's approach, is I'm not too hopeful how the government is kind of going to provide this utility or what utility. Generally, my experience is they were left taxpayers to fend for themselves, and possibly here also they may provide a very crude one, which kind of put a pen whether return filed or not, yes or no ka answer aayega. And then you still keep on wondering it was filed under 139.1 or 139.5. So I am not so hopeful on that government utility. Nishit, your view, you have any points that the government should address immediately?
So likely is one is what utility release at the earliest is one, and second is to have a more consultative approach. So like after the TCS provision came in and directly a circular came in which created in a way more confusion on what happens to transaction like unlisted shares and other stuff, units of AIF mutual funds which are not listed. So similarly, at least if you have created a law which you would also be hearing over various social media and you would have received representations from various companies that there are complications. So at least give an opportunity to the taxpayers to put down the difficulties. You then evaluate yourself as government that no, this concern is valid, not valid, and at least whatever are valid concerns without even consulting the industry, because there are certain practical challenges which corporate will face, which government may not realize, like what Anuprita and Mayurbhai were mentioning, that companies have taken a call to pay TCS on themselves on accrual basis rather than on collection basis because of lot of practical difficulties. So that government may not realize. Government in fact would have be of the view that हमने तो collection के time पे pay करने को भेजा है, so even if there is a bad debt, there is no problem, you are not paying TCS. But they don't know that SAP and accounting does not work that way. People are already paying that TCS in advance. So that's the only thing that, like for DTC or for permanent establishment rules, there are some window available to give our suggestion as professionals also, as companies also. So something of that sort can be done before issuing a clarificatory circular. It could be really help and weed out a lot of small issues which could be irritants rather than real issues.
Right. Thank you, Nishit. Thank you all the panel members. Really helpful kind of your discussions. I think it threw a lot of light. I think we have already passed the time limit, so I'm not going to take any further my questions. But there are a host of questions that the people have put down. I'm just kind of going to scroll down that. Arun and Kalpana, if we have the permission, we can kind of in next 5 to 10 minutes cover most of these questions. A lot of those questions are already covered, so I don't have to repeat them, but the others will quickly cover.
Sure, Maulik. Please go ahead.
Thanks. Super. So the question one, maybe Nishit, you want to take a swipe at this. Is that the 50,000 limit is to be checked basis ITR of the vendor or customer, or is it to be applicable only between transactions between the collector, deductor, customer, vendor kind of thing, or is it vis-a-vis the total thing? I think we touched upon it. If there is a clear answer, you can say yes. Otherwise, we know that it's an area of gray.
No, so there is no clear answer. So there is a confusion as to whether I have to look vis-a-vis the payer or the deductee. But the better view or the view which is coming out of reading the section is you need to actually determine whether deductee has suffered a 50,000 tax, not only from you, but overall whether a TDS of 50,000 has been deducted out of his payment. So that's the view which I believe is the view coming out from the reading of the provisions. Obviously, it's not so clear, but that's the view which we have.
Okay. There's another question which says that please clarify if the taxpayer has not filed tax returns for 2 years and does not even have a permanent account number, then what should be the TDS rate?
So I don't know. It's simple. 206 AA applies and 2 other section also applies. So the moment he does not have a pen, you need not check whether he has filed return or not. So it's obvious he must have not filed. So higher of the rates would apply. So 5% or under 206 AA, if that 5% is given as a highest rate, or the actual rate into 2 times the rate, whichever is higher should apply.
Okay.
And this has been provisioned, higher of 206 AA or 206 AB, that is already provisioned into the Act.
Right. Okay, this is an interesting question. Maybe Mayurbhai or Anupita can come in. See, basically, in the current year, you would have raised invoices. Most companies started putting down TCS on the invoice itself. So your year-end invoices would have raised invoices with TCS of 0.075%, right? And now from 1st April, the rate has increased to 0.1%. So when the customer pays you money in May 21 or June 21, how do you reconcile? Would you pay the differential 0.025% to the government?
Sorry, you go ahead.
Yeah, I think in my view, we will have to, because the TCS is on collection, right? On a strict interpretation of the section. So you will have to collect the differential from the customer by raising a debit note.
Right.
Here there is one more aspect, Maulik. Every year you have to cross 50 lakhs and amount in excess of 50 lakhs is required to be on which TCS is applicable. So again, if I am falling, my collection is falling less than 50 lakhs in the current year out of the invoices of the last year, then actually I was not supposed to collect the TCS. So I will straight not go for that 25% additional, but that one aspect also I have to see, because that 50 lakhs limit reckons every year.
Super.
Yeah.
Super. There's another interesting question, Mayurbhai. This is for you definitely. Whether these additional compliance burden, which are in violation of the provisions of Taxpayers Charter, which is now a part of Income Tax Act. This is the question.
So technically, no, these are not in violation. We may feel that yes, this is burdening us a lot, and that's why you've used the word burden. Practically, you know, if this has been explained at the time of introduction via memorandum, via explanatory notes, that what is being intended by them, and they are asking you to verify. At the same time, there is a clear-cut indication. Say, for example, if I am referring to the 2 years checking of 2 years returns filed by my deductee. So there is a government also has indicated that they will come out, which we discussed at depth, I mean in a lot of detail. So broadly, yes, it is not violation of the charter, but it appears to be a burdensome. Yes.
Right. Nishit, there are 4 or 5 questions from 4 or 5 people on whether TDS would be applied on amount including GST or excluding GST. So any thoughts on that?
So there was a specific circular on clarification at the time of service tax. So we can probably rely on that and say that it is not applicable on GST. It should be excluding the GST amount.
But that was for only professional fees, no, Nishit?
Right.
So other payment, it was even in service tax open issue.
Right.
Unless the government clarifies, I think the better portion would be to deduct tax on the entire amount, including GST, unless the government clarifies and provides some clarification by way of FAQ.
And on TCS, for TCS, you have to collect, of course, on the entire invoice amount, including GST. Yeah,
absolutely. So it's more likely that the government may come out with that also. There's another question that this 40A1A shall be applicable if someone forgets to deduct taxes on purchase of goods under 194Q. Mayurbhai, you want to take that?
So 40A1A refers to any expenditure.
Right.
And whether you consider purchases as your expenditure, that is the answer.
Understood. Okay. Simple.
And imagine the huge amount of disallowance, because purchase of goods probably is major part of your P&L. So,
so 30% of it.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think these are by and large the questions that are there. There were questions on whether there's a likelihood of the dates being extended because corporates need to get prepared. There are questions on what the utility would provide for. Some of these we don't have an answer, so I'm not kind of going into those questions. But yeah, there is a lot of there are a lot of comments on increasing the extending the deadline from 30th June or 1st of July to a better date, especially in light of COVID situation. I'm sure similar representations would have been filed with the government, and the government will consider. While the government will consider, don't be hopeful that government will intimate you well in advance. They'll still make you kind of work throughout that thing and tell you on 30th June that this is postponed by 3 months. So super. So I think this was a great discussion. I really enjoyed it. I really kind of enjoyed. Thank you so much, Mayur Bhai and Anuprita and Nishit, to kind of really facilitate this and really get the real crux of our discussion to our audience. I'm sure our audience would have really liked this. This is from our side over to TaxSutra team to take it forward.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Maulik, for so beautifully articulating this and moderating this entire session. And thank you so much, Mayur sir, Anuprita ma'am, and Nishit for consenting to be panelists. I think it was a very riveting panel discussion, and it was clearly evidenced by we had almost 550 participants today. So I think it was really insightful. Thank you so much to everyone for this.
Right. Just one last point. If there are any questions they'll not answer, we'll try and kind of send reply by way of an email to that person, so that we all the questions that were raised, we will ensure that they are getting answered in one way or the other.
Sure. Maulik, we'll have that sent to you.
Sure. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for your
I
participation.
really enjoyed being a part of this panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you once again to TaxSutra for organizing this. Thank you.
Thank you.